Hey everybody, it's your boy SlickestHitz coming to you on day 2 of the new Hearthstone expansion, Scholomance Academy. The meta is rocking. There are a bunch of really fun decks, and today we're joined by OverlordMC to talk about a couple of those decks. OverlordMC, how do you feel about the new expansion?
Yo, what up, everyone? Man, it is a crazy meta right now. Crazy. This is the power creep that I was waiting for. Definitely seen a lot of powerful decks right now. Hopefully, the ones that we're talking about are some that, some people maybe not picked up yet, but I'm pretty sure they've seen it on ladder.
So there are a bunch of interesting decks, and they range from aggro, tempo, to control. Right now, we're just going to talk about 3 decks that we're interested in. First, we have this Totem Shaman Overlord MC. What do you feel about this deck? Why do you want to talk about it?
Okay, so with this Totem Shaman, the reason why I want to talk about it, because I'm pretty sure we're going to talk about the next deck that relates to it later down the road, but it has a fair matchup against Druid, and that's the reason why I like it. I mean, it still plays the same strategies, uh, but there's some interactions here with the new cards that I feel like that gave the deck a lot bigger chances or better chances. One card being Tour Guide. The fact that it's a one cost and your hero power becomes 0. And one interaction that I didn't realize that it doesn't say next turn, so you could leave it at 0 cost whenever you need. So say you have that totemic reflection or something in your hand, and you can hold out for it. You don't have the hero power just right there. So you can play the what you call it, tour guide, one turn, and then the next turn hero power, and then totemic reflection, which is pretty strong. So you establish a pretty strong board early on, and you could basically just, if you, as long as you keep your board up, start copying things using splitting axe and such. Um, then you have a pretty strong chance, and you got a lot of ways to buff. My favorite way of ending the game is using Diligent Note Taker, and using that with Totemic Might, because you're basically getting +4, or no, sorry, not Totemic Might, Totemic Surge. You're getting +4 attack for basically 2 mana. That is pretty nutty. Of course, you have to have a board, but this deck also has things like Totem Goliath and Runic Carvings, just for some get back. Because I know if you can't keep your totems on board, at least in the mid range turns, those 2 cards can kind of fill your board back up. So pretty strong.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the totem shaman decks that we've seen to this point are really you gas up very fast in the early turns, but this deck list does run the totem Goliath and runic carvings to try and give you some get back towards the late game if they do have the board clears. But it looks like a good aggressive deck. I like that it runs trick totem, trying to to scam some wins with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, interesting deck, and we're gonna move right on to the next one. I want to talk about Freeze Mage. Oh, I thought I zoomed in a little bit, so let's zoom in now. So this
Ooh,
is a
okay.
deck that I believe was originally posted by Hunter Ace, and it's been tweaked with a little bit since then. And it looks very interesting. So essentially, what you want to do is you draw your combo pieces and you do nothing install for 9 turns. It's very heavy on the draw. So you want to make sure you get your Mozaki and you get your cheap spells once you have your Mozaki and 2 Sorcerer's Apprentice. After you've used both your Blizzards, after you use both your Frost Novas, after you've used your Icicles, after you used your Ray of Frost, you still have enough small spells left to blow an opponent up. I've seen videos of Fino getting 40 damage off in 1 turn pretty
Oof.
easily. Um, so I think this deck may run into some problems against some heavy aggro decks. Like if you play against an aggressive Demon Hunter, you might just not be able to make it to turn 9. But I think there is sufficient freeze and sufficient removal to make that happen. What's really nice here is the interaction between the Lordkeeper, Podal, and the rest of your deck. So it'll rearrange it so you know you're going to draw your Blizzards, you know you're going to draw your Mozaki, and you're probably going to draw your Frost Novas and your Arcane Intellects, and then you can kind of plan so you know your spells are going to be progressively cheaper, so you can go in a little bit earlier, because after novice, or excuse me, after Frostbolt and Cram Session, everything is just 1 cost. I also included the deck list that has a Spear of Sapience, because that helps you kind of control what you're going to draw and what you need, especially in the early game. It can be really helpful. So very interesting deck. It does a decent job against Druid as well, because it just keeps them frozen.
Yeah,
if it lets them not swing into you and all of that good stuff. Um,
I think
any
it's going to
comments on
be a
this one?
strong deck.
Mm-hmm.
Especially looking now how much freeze you have. One new card being Brain Freeze. That card's actually pretty decent. Can do spell damage as well. What else we got? The fact that Lore Keeper can kind of make your deck a little more consistent, just because it's going to rearrange your deck and you're more likely to pull into that Mizaki quicker. And you having enough freeze on the board, it's going to be pretty interesting. I'm wondering if a decent tech card would be something like what's that card? The 07 Doomsayer.
It could be, but then I think you might run into the problem of it'll help against aggro decks for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if you are struggling against aggro, then that's something to consider. And then
But
keeping it in the
overall,
mulligan.
yeah,
Yeah.
you having enough freeze, I think, is just enough that you don't need.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the last deck that we're going to talk about today, and it's by far the most popular deck on the meta. In the meta, I would like to think we have the Survival of the Fittest Hunter, or excuse me, Survival of the Fittest Druid with Kale. What do you feel about this, MC?
This deck is just rampant right now on ladder. I'm pretty sure everyone is seeing it right now. Some variation, some form, some run similar to the old spell druid with of course they both run the Sarah, but some run it with the Emerald Dragon as well as the Breath of Dreams package. I myself like to run the Wild Growth package instead with another beast because sometimes I feel like I do whiff on Guardians of Animals since you're drawing so many cards with Overflow. Um, Other than that, this deck is pretty strong. You can go off a little bit faster just because of Kale. I see some lists run two Survival Fittest. I think one is sufficient because you could still play quite a bit of a board. My list actually runs one Mount Seller too because you do run enough cheap spells that if you hold on to them and you need some way to get another board, because I feel like this deck can pretty much make maybe 2 to 4 strong boards, but if they clear all of that, it's tough.
Yeah, I agree. This is by far the probably the best deck in the meta right now. You do see some teched in cards. You have a Cult Nephitite that you probably aren't going to need in all situations, but it can be good running in the mirror match and things like that, I suppose. But even if you weren't running the Cold Nephitite and you were running an additional beast or a second Mount Seller and things like that, or even the second or Survival of the Fittest, which may be a little too bulky, um, this is probably the easiest way to rank up in the ladder right now. It's just a really well-rounded deck. You have so
Mm-hmm.
much ramp that you really get to your turn 7 fast enough where you're not going to really have a problem with aggro decks. You have the healing of Crystal Power and Overflow to get back if you do run into an aggro deck. So overall, really, really powerful deck, and we're seeing a
Mm-hmm.
meta that is still developing. So while these decks may be good today, in
Could get
3
nerfed.
days from now, it may really change. The meta may shift entirely. Just like how last expansion we didn't see decks like Egg Warrior until a few weeks out. So I would still
Mm-hmm.
hold on to your dust. Don't rush to craft anything just as yet. There are going to be a lot of nuances, a lot of different techs once we figure out what cards fit in what decks and what decks are going to be the most powerful. So that
Yeah.
is all that we have today for you. We didn't want to take too much time, but we just wanted to recap a few of the best decks that we've seen so far. MC, any final remarks?
I just want to brush up real quick on the Cole new fight. That card was my personal tech. I've seen it run against me in a Face Hunter deck when I was playing the Druid, and man, it just. I mean, you definitely got to time it correctly when you think they're about to pop off, and maybe it might be okay against, if Mage gets prevalent because yeah, they're a spell type deck. But this is a personal tech. I don't know if it's gonna be meta breaking, but I hope so. Like yeah, it could be really good to stop their combos in time.
All right, everybody, that's all that we got for you today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Again, it's SlickestHitz coming to you with Overlord MC. Please, if you like the content, subscribe to the YouTube, follow the Twitter, and follow me on Twitch. Hope you guys have very good grinding. Peace out.
Peace.